Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1979's Sensual Fire. This is 1979 Sensual Fire, part of the Vinegar Syndrome Peakorama Big 2 Unit show with 3 Ripening Cherries, which I've already reviewed on this YouTube page you can check out. I've been doing a lot of these Peakorama Big 2 Unit shows from Vinegar Syndrome where they actually feature 2 X-rated films of classic erotica on one disc, and most of it I think restored from in 2K from the 35 millimeter negative. So it's not like you're getting 2 films in half-ass quality. This is the best quality you're ever going to see these films. But for tonight, we are looking at Sensual Fire, and this is from 1979, directed by Carlos Tobalina, aka Troy Benny. He also directed the other film on here, 3 Ripening Cherries. As a matter of fact, Vinegar Syndrome has been putting out a lot of Carlos Tobalina, and I've been looking at a lot of Carlos Tobalina so far on this YouTube page. Much more to come. We are looking at Sensual Fire. The poster says the tremendous allure of young sex, and it stars Jamie Gillis, Serena, Dorothy LeMay, lots of Dorothy LeMay. If you're a Dorothy LeMay fan, you're going to love this movie, and Jessica St. James. These are people you've seen in other Carlos Tobalina films as well, and Jamie Gillis, of course, just a that man is definitely probably one of the best male actors in the X-rated genre. So let's look at this film here. Some 2 screenshots on the back of the DVD just from Sensual Fire. You can see Dorothy LeMay right there, a side view of her. Let's look at this film here. It's 90 minutes. Sensual Fire details a man who's basically asked his girlfriend to move in with him, but his girlfriend has a daughter, and the daughter lost her dad at age 4 or something like that. So the mom has not had a father for her daughter, but he also invites the daughter over, and the daughter looks to be, probably 18 or 19 or something like that, or maybe a bit younger, maybe 16, 17. Don't know, because it is the 70s here, so they can fantasize with that. In modern X-rated films, they cannot have any type of fantasy with that, although all the actors here, of course, were 18 or older. But so the daughter's moving in, and he very much has a very active sex life with his girlfriend, and he is so committed to being a father to this girl that he is even, kind of taken over his rec room in the house and made it her bedroom. He's a very busy man. He does a lot of business out of the house. He has a big library. He's constantly reading and researching, and works in the San Francisco area. Now, what happens is that some tension starts to erupt through a hole in his wall from his library shelf into the daughter's room. And he starts to have some sensual fire towards the daughter. So let's look at this film of sexual tension, lust, animalistic lust, and let's look at this film here because there's a lot of different facets to it, and a lot of great sex in the film. And so let's look at it here. This is Sensual Fire from Carlos Tobalina. Now, when we look at the music, when we listen to the music in this film, if you know Carlos Tobalina, you're going to know that this is wall-to-wall music. There is music in every ounce of this film. I mean, the majority of this film are sex scenes and longer sex scenes, so of course you're going to have tons of music. And Carlos Tobalina almost plays the music in this film as if it's a radio station. One song ends, another song starts up, another song starts up, and they can have all different vibes and emotions and genres even. What we have here is we have some 70s kind of upbeat, dramatic music you might hear in a 70s television show, and you kind of mix that with some disco and some funk. You almost kind of mix the elevator music vibes with disco and funk and some really hard grooves in this film. Some really deep grooves in this film, real funky, real groovy, and we also have some electronica in this film that's evoking some weird atmospheres, almost borderlining experimental avant-garde, and these musical styles are not uncommon in Carlos Tobalina's films, but this is wall-to-wall music. It's great stuff, great music, and for the vast majority of it, you're not hearing moaning. Carlos really puts the music front and center, and which is definitely a trademark of him from what I've seen so far. The music is front and center, and the moans will come occasionally and definitely near the climax of the film as well. So great music and some of the deepest grooves I've heard in a Carlos film so far in this particular movie. So we get groovy, we get atmospheric, we get type of very light also. We have light, we have hard, groovy, and some of it doesn't have a beat. Some of it is kind of very airy and dramatic. Now, when we look at the style and the cinematography for this film, Carlos, this is one of his films where he's really doing a lot of close-ups in here. He has a good number of close-ups with intercourse, even some close-ups with the men in this film, with their butts, penises. We have a crazy close-up shot of a girl licking a guy's butthole. That would be Jamie Gillis's butthole. And we have just some close-ups in here. We also have a couple repeated from a different angle ejaculation scenes in this film, which Carlos also does in some other films. Now, I will also say that the opening credit sequence in this film, and then mimicking a bit near the climax of the film, are these wild kaleidoscope lens flares. I've never quite seen anything like it before, but kaleidoscope lens flares. It's wild. Now, we also have a trademark where Carlos is kind of doing these establishing shots at where the action is taking place, and there's a Rolls Royce in the front, and it's a house, and I believe once again, it's one of Carlos Tobalina's homes. This is his home, and he does this like exact same establishing shot in so many of his films that I've seen so far. It's so interesting. But he puts like the kaleidoscope lens flare on it. And he does this really cool thing with the actor and actress's names in the opening credits and the closing credits, almost taking a strobe effect. Very lavish, very stylistic. Very, very stylistic. And then he starts to kind of mimic those kaleidoscope lens flares within the movie itself near the end of the film as things are starting to get sensually fiery. And we have some interesting things in this film. Carlos Tobalina definitely being a sexploitation king, an X-rated king, and a classic erotica director. He will sometimes deal with sexual themes, sexual psychology, sexual sociology. And this is definitely one of those films where we have the lead character who is definitely just filled with absolute sexual desire and lust for his, I guess, soon-to-be stepdaughter. And he goes to a friend who's a psychiatrist. He even goes to a priest friend and gets various counsel along the way on how to deal with this. Now, this being 1979, this being an X-rated film, you know you are going to be getting some counsel in this film that is unlike any counsel you've heard before. Definitely open-minded counsel, definitely counsel within the worldview of free love, definitely not closed-minded and not conservative and without boundaries, but interesting nonetheless. And you start to wonder while you're watching the film, wait a second, is that, oh, that's interesting. Does that have any validity to it? You know, these crazy things. One of the most interesting elements of the psychology of the film is on possibly why Jamie Gillis is having a lot of sexual desire towards his stepdaughter. The why. That was interesting. Very, very interesting. And we have just a variety of psychology, a variety of advice happening throughout the film. And a twist near the end on how Jamie Gillis is getting his final piece of advice on how to deal with his lust towards his stepdaughter. And it involves a costume party of sorts. Now, the interesting thing also is that Carlos Tobalina, I've seen this, and actually the other film that's on this disc with Three Ripening Cherries, you can watch that review on this YouTube page. He's doing a similar thing in this film, which is he is mixing the mind with reality. He's mixing fantasy with reality, and he's interchanging it in the editing room. He's cutting it together, and it makes for somewhat of a surreal experience of and a more potent experience, a more powerful experience. I did want to note that as well too with the music, that some of the music is very, very powerful in its grooves and in its effect and atmosphere. There's some pretty dramatic dance music in this film as well that almost could go into like a Quentin Tarantino film during like a big piece of action or a big twist in the storyline or something about to erupt that we know about that the characters don't know about or something like that. Um, Dorothy LeMay is front and center in this film. She is all throughout this film. And as you know, in an X-rated film, even though there is a fantasy scene, well, the people are actually having sex, even in a fantasy scene, there is a whorehouse or a prostitution house in the film that's looked at a few times that has some mildly kind of humorous aspects to it, but also, you know, this is a film of with some long sex scenes in here, and wild at times, and intense at times, and all throughout the film. I mean, we have Serena in here, and we have two girls, one guy, and one guy, one girl. Now the film opens up with sex between Jamie Gillis and his, I guess, fiance, girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, something like that. And there's also a radical twist of dialogue at the end of the film as well, with some humor. There's definitely some humor being played throughout this film as well, and Jamie Gillis is an amazing actor, and his acting in this film, his timing, the way he does things is so freaking good. The way he expresses tension, the way he expresses lust, the way he expresses sexual fire and desire. What a great title for this film, because at the end of the film there is actually an explosion. Yes, a bomb, an explosion, fire, atomic energy. You'll have to see it to see what I'm saying. And that was very stylistic and very interesting in its approach as well. Um, there are some wild things happening in this film, obviously incestuous, and also dealing with the fetish of younger girls and older guys. And it's wild, it's well done. If you love that stuff, you're going to love this movie. Dorothy LeMay is one of my favorites. She looks great in this film. Serena looks great in this film. And if you're a fan of Jamie Gillis and his amazing acting and hair, you're going to love this movie as well. And he's just such a great actor in the X-rated genre and just in general. This is Sensual Fire from 1979, directed by Carlos Tobalina. Here it is, folks. Part of the double bill with 3 ripening cherries. You can't go wrong with this. I paid like probably 16 bucks for this disc. Really, really great stuff. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarre YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like Sensual Fire. What awesome hot sex scenes in this film as well, and some that are pretty transgressive of sorts for the straight viewer. So anyway, folks, here it is. Thank you so much, and please feel free to check out my own personal films by Googling Apartment 1014 Films. Thank you so much. Good night.